Okay, so open up the device editor, go to the grid mode, and we'll set grid. We use millimeters because that's what the datasheet's in. Okay, so next thing we do is pick up the pad command for the SMD and start placing the pads. There are 4 pads, so we look at the datasheet, take a look at it, and there are the sizes. So we're going to use that, and usually increase them about 20% depending on the size of the pad. We'll print it out later and lay the pad over it and take a look and see exactly how big we have to make it. So just pop down the SMD pads, center around that crosshair, which is the middle of the board. So there's 4 of them, and then we're going to go into the properties and change the pin number in. So this one is going to be pin 1, and then I'm going to actually type in the position from the datasheet. Also change the size of the pad so that we match what's in the datasheet again. Turn off the stop. We don't want the stop on this one. I'll go into that in a bit more detail. We'll leave the thermals on. Okay, so the next one, change the name, which is the pin number again. Change the position. That's the center of the pad. The angle's the same, and then change the size again. You can do this with the GUI with the drag and drop and the mouse, but I prefer to do it by typing it in. We keep it on layer 1 top for the moment for building this device, but you can pretty much do everything in the package editor that you can in Eagle itself to make very complex parts. But this is a very simple switch. And if you were making a chip or anything else, it would be just as simple as this. You really basically just need these pads. The white lines are basically the area for the thermals and for the cream, and the cream is basically the solder paste. And here we are filling in the rest of the pads. And now zoom in, we can take a look at them. Everything looks okay. So what we're going to go do now is save it. And back into the library editor, and I guess we're going to go straight to the symbol, create a new symbol, give it the name of the package we're building, new symbol, and now we're going to start adding pins. There's the pin command, and we're going to start placing these onto the board. And this is the schematic that you would see in the Schematic Editor in Eagle. So we'll just lay these out as we would see them in the device. There's a lot of information gets shown in the library editor, but you'll not see that all in the in Eagle itself when we're actually using the part. And now I'm just going to draw in a schematic drawing. This isn't actually the what goes onto the PCB. This is just what we see in the schematic editor as the symbol. So we're just going to draw a little makeshift switch symbol here. Now we're going to change the width of those wires to match the ones that already exist. Whoops, a bit smaller than that. And now go into the properties of the pin, 1 by 1, and we're going to change each of them. Now, first of all, we're going to match up the pin number. So each one obviously matches the pad of the pin, so that's what the name is. And then we're going to use the direction and change it to passive, and passive is basically just a general input-output device. Later on, when we look at the ERC, the electrical rules check in Eagle, it is able to know what type of pin, and you can see this in out power, and that's how Eagle knows that you've connected a wire to a power source or to an input, to an output, and that way later on when you're actually laying out the schematic and you run a check on it, you'll be able to see if you've accidentally connected a power pin to you know, an input or an input to an output, and it'll automatically know for you. So it's always a good idea to fill those in. Okay, so we've highlighted device, created all of the pins now, numbered them each through 1, 2, 3, 4. And the next step is basically going to be putting it all together. And I'm actually adding the audio here as another pass. So the circles are where the wires are going to go to, the green circles. So that's where the wires will connect to in the schematic editor. Again, this is not what goes along to the PCB. That's going to come later. Just tidying up the package a little bit, make it a little bit smaller. I didn't really spend a lot of time doing this, to be honest. Just using the commands around. I'm just going to add a couple of circles. These are somewhat tricky because of the grid scale, but I'm going to make one of these and then change the properties on it using the next with the right mouse button to click through it. As you can see, there's the width and the position. I'm just going to change that width and radius. Make it a little bit neater so that you can see it on the schematic. Now I'm just going to copy them over. Right click copy, right click copy, right click copy, and paste it down with the left mouse button. And that's generally about it. So pass is passive. So basically input or output. Now we're going to add the name and the values, and these are basically the labels you'll see in the schematic and also on the PCB later. The name goes in the name layer. We have to make sure, keep it as a vector font too. The size is the size of the font, the ratio is the width. So the name and the value. So the name of the component, the value of component, and that's typically what I'd add. Each of those goes onto the correct layers, and you can look at that in more detail in the video. Okay, so that's pretty much the whole thing. We've added the name, the value, all the pins, 4 pins, and drawn a little switch. And that's generally the symbol for a switch. You can make it a little bit fancier about that. So now we're off into the rest of the editor, and this is actually the device itself. So we give it another name, and we create the device, pop it down here in the top left. I'm going to rejigger the window in a minute because it's not quite how we're going to do. And then we're going to pick the footprint, which is the one we made first, and that's the actual that's actually the package. So the package gets placed in the top right there. The symbol is in the top left, and then down here we're going to have the connection. Adding a little description of it in. This is adding a description of the part. It can be anything you want. This will appear later in the library editor. So let's do that. Kind of think about what to put in here. It is basically just a very simple momentary switch. So you can put in a lot of information here. It also supports HTML tags, so you can add some of that in there too. Sometimes I just copy out of the datasheet and put it in there, and put a link to the datasheet as well. Also, you can put part numbers in, I guess, but that's good. So okay, so these are the actual pin connections. So we created 2 sets of pin connections, the actual pads and the pins. So the pins are from the schematic version, the pads are from the actual device, and we just click through those 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 3 to 4, and when that's done, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, you'll see the little tick, and once that tick appears, it tells us it's all good. Now then, so we're actually going to go over here and update the library. So Eagle, the library, has a use and an update, and that lets us pick the part after we've saved it out. I'm going to run through that rather quickly there. And now we're picking the part, and so that will actually update it. Let's see, so update should be down here. Look through for the part that we want. There it is, the switch. There's all the stuff we filled in. And there it is. So that's the old one, the S1 that I had before. Just a generic switch. I'm going to get rid of that one and wire up the new one. You can see that there's the diagram that I drew for it. Give it a name. And then we're going to start drawing the wires for it. Now, the sharp eye of you notice that it's completely wrong. I just shorted out the switch, and I don't notice this while I'm doing it. In fact, I even go as far as cutting the board out, and then we have to make some rather radical changes to it But yep, if I'd been paying attention to the switch that I've been creating here, I would have noticed that the two green wires are in fact shorting out, which is bad, obviously. I did fix this later in the library. So there we go. That's how to create it. That's how to use it, and we're just putting it together in the schematic, adding the ground and the output pins. So it's pretty easy to go through. That was rather fast, I know. We'll probably do a bit more in depth on the part building. It is quite a big process, but basically that's all you really want to do. Create the pads, the first thing. So that's the package. If you go to the actual device first and go from there, you can actually edit from inside that, and it makes it a bit neater. But so it's here we are placing the part down with the completely wrong way of working. But we won't find that out until after it's built, and I'm at NSL actually putting this together and going, oh, that switch doesn't work.